What's up everyone, Michael Guy Spirit here with an impressions review of Super Galaxy Squadron EX, a shmup, more in the classical style of the insane bullet hell style type of games, and it's quite fun as well. So this is technically, one thing that I want to mention before we continue is, this is technically a free update to the already original Super Galaxy Squadron, which if you already own that game on Steam, you will get the EX version as a free update, which is pretty sweet. And if you want the EX game, you can actually buy it. So if you buy one, you get both of them. So when you buy Super Galaxy Squadron EX, you also get the classic mode. Now the classic mode is, I would say, not as good or not as polished as the EX version, but you can also go back to it if you want to. Now I won't be making too many comparisons in this video, so if you want to check that out, it's out there. See those. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at the options real quick because there's not many of them. You got your screen shake. I'm actually going to turn that off for the sake of this video just because the compression might go well. The screen shake's not too bad. Basically, when things blow up, the screen will shake a little bit. I personally like it off most of the time, but when I'm just playing for fun, I might turn it on. Then you got rumble feature. If you're playing with the controller, I don't have a controller plugged in, so it doesn't really matter, but you can turn it on and off. You got your volume control, which works as you'd expect. I wish there was multiple volume sliders for like music and ship sound effects and stuff like that. Like maybe I want ship bullets to sound a little bit louder than something else. That's always nice to see in these types of games. It's rare that we'll see that in these types of games, but it's something I'd like to see regardless. Then you have your controls, which you can't rebind, unfortunately. So you got your pause, which is going to be shift. You got your fire, hyper, and movement. These aren't rebindable, but you can use the gamepad and the keyboard. There's no mouse control either, but my mouse does show up, but doesn't really matter to me too much on this game since I'm going to be using the keyboard to play anyways, but it would be nice to have mouse control. And then obviously the gamepad works as you'd expect. I don't currently have mine plugged in, so whatever. And then also you got to hit space to go back, which is kind of weird. And then you also have your scoreboard. So if you're going for like score attack type stuff, this is definitely here. Now this is a local leaderboards. I don't know if there's Steam leaderboards or not, but my local leaderboards are full because I just updated my game and it reset my leaderboards. So that's the thing that happened. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and look at the game modes real quick. So basically there is arcade mode, which is going to be your main 6 stages of traditional shmup action, as it says on there. And you can actually continue this whenever you want. So like my last autosave, I'm actually on a boss. And so I'm going to save that for showing you guys how the boss mechanic works. And I'm going to go ahead and go into the endless. Now the cool thing about the arcade is you can actually switch ships at the beginning of each stage. And so you're not stuck on one ship the entire game, which is kind of nice. Now, endless mode actually has 2 modes. One of them isn't quite available yet, and I don't know when they plan on adding this in, so I don't know when the video comes out, if this will be released or not. But basically, this is supposed to be like a more difficult mode, I guess, as it sends more and more enemies to you as you go. But we're going to go ahead and look at the Zen mode, which is still basically the same thing. It sends enemies at you, and you blow them up, and you get power-ups and stuff. And it has all the features of the game, except for the story and the bosses, which I'll show later. Alright, so here we are at the ship selection, so you can go ahead and look at all the ships and what they do. So they have different weapons. They each kind of coordinate to a color. Now, the classic mode, I know I said I wasn't making comparisons, but they actually had a color wheel for that one, which was kind of cool. But basically, as you look on here, it actually has like a color wheel kind of feel to it. And they all have their own little ship drivers and then a description, except for this one to where it's just an alien blob and you don't know how old he is. He could be agent for all we know. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and pick a random one. Let's do one that looks interesting. Let's go ahead and do the green one. This one, a prototype of Revolution AI. That sounds cool. So we'll go ahead and pick that. Also, the ships have different stats, so if you're looking for different stats, you can also pick them depending on their power, agility, and so on. So different ships will actually move differently. They'll have different bullets. Now, you start off with a pretty decent bullet spread here, as you can see. So we're basically playing exactly what you would expect from a shmup. Now, I did say it's more on the classic side of the bullet hell stuff, and we will start to see a lot of bullets. Now, I'm playing with a keyboard. I prefer to play these with a joystick, but my gamepad is actually kind of broken at the moment. So that kind of led the precision aspect to be impossible, because you do want a little bit of precision. So I'm not going to be playing exactly amazing on here. But regardless, let's go ahead and talk about mechanics. So, I actually got my hyper ready already. Sweet. I haven't actually seen this guy's hyper, so that's going to be exciting. Anyway, so what are your main mechanics? So you're going around, you're shooting these guys by holding down the fire button, and you pick up these power-ups, which increase your main weapon damage and then your secondary weapon damage. So my primary is actually those green bullets that are shooting out constantly. And then you can also see the heavier green bullets that actually shoot out. Now, as we saw with the ship selection, each ship actually has different bullets and bullet spreads and a secondary weapon. And as you upgrade these, if you look on the right side above that giant glowing hyper bar, you'll actually see these little boxes. Now, when you fill those up, that's when you're collecting the power-ups. That's how many times you have your weapon upgraded. And the more upgrades you have, the faster it shoots, the more damage it does, and so on and so forth, as you'd expect. Now, below there is your hyper, and that'll actually activate a hyper weapon. Now, if I wait a second and get a few enemies on screen, I can hit the hyper, and it'll use the hyper ability, which this one shoots out a little arrow thing that damages things in an area, and you build hyper by destroying ships and shooting things and building up your combo. Now on the left side, you'll actually see that combo up at the top to where it's building up. Now the interesting thing about the combo meter is that blowing up the smaller ships will just keep the combo timer up, but if you don't destroy things in a certain amount of time, then your combo will actually start decaying. Now to get your combo up, you destroy larger ships or destroy significant ships or collect power-ups and stuff like that will also get you score. And the score is actually counted in credits up in the very, very top left. You'll see I also have a time going on for how long I've been in the Zen mode. I think that may only be in the endless modes. I'm not 100% sure. It might be in the main arcade mode as well. I didn't really pay attention to it. So it's probably there and I just missed it. And then obviously you have your health bar as well, which is kind of interesting. You don't have ship lives in this one. Instead, you actually have a health bar. And as you get hit, that will decrease. Now in Zen mode and the normal arcade mode, now when you select the arcade mode, you actually have an option between the normal and hardcore mode, which hardcore doesn't drop like health drops and stuff like that. However, in the normal mode, it does. So if you're looking for that hardcore experience, you definitely have that. Now we're starting to get quite a few bullets and I got hit. Now one thing that I like about this game is actually the way they handle the hitboxes. Now your entire ship isn't your hitbox, as most of these have actually tended to have as a feature. Instead, your little tiny glowing cockpit in the center of your ship is your hitbox. So you're actually not paying attention to your entire ship. Now one of my complaints about the game is actually the visuals a little bit can get in the way a lot. Now that's kind of expected for these bullet hells, and people who are fans of the genre kind of expect that sort of thing. But it can be kind of difficult to see that little tiny dot on your ship when things get really, really frantic. And they do get more crazy than this, as we'll see when I switch over into arcade mode and try to beat that boss that I'm not going to beat because it's impossible at the moment for me, mainly because I'm using a keyboard. Now as you collect these power-ups, if you take damage and you hit your cockpit, you actually drop power-ups. And so there's kind of a power down element as well. So you're not just looking at your health bar as well. So it's like, oh yeah, I took a hit, I lose a little bit of health. You're actually losing that power. Now the entire game is supposedly defeatable without those upgrades, and I would attest to that. It's very, very possible without any upgrades to actually beat the entire thing, and that would actually be a fun challenge to go through and try and beat the entire game without using power-ups. However, it does get rather difficult, as in, you see there's a bunch of ships going on. Now the Zen mode is pretty casual, as in, it's pretty relaxed on the amount of enemies it's sending at me. It's just blowing stuff up. So we talked about the mechanics. You're going to be picking up these blue things as your credits and stuff like that, and that gives you your score, and they are affected by the multiplier and stuff like that. And let me just go ahead and blow myself up. Now, one thing that's also interesting is that running into ships actually doesn't damage you. You have to actually get hit by bullets or lasers and stuff like that as well, which is kind of interesting. And each enemy ship actually has its own bullet type and its own kind of movement pattern as well. So yeah, and apparently that was a rank C, as in impressive. I don't agree with that. Now, I could change ships and retry if I wanted to, but we're going to go ahead and exit. That was the whole introduction thing that it plays every time. Now, let's go ahead and go into continue. Now, there are bosses in the game. I'm not going to be able to beat this guy, but at the beginning of the bosses in normal mode, it'll actually drop you health drops. Now, I just hit continue on my arcade, so it actually saves your progress on arcade mode at the beginning of the stage or at a boss, which is quite nice. And if I die at this boss, it'll just reset me. Now, I'm not going to be able to beat this guy because I'm just not good enough for that. And I'm playing on veteran mode, which is probably a bad idea. I play a lot of shmups, but I'm not necessarily good at them, so yeah, and I'm taking a lot of damage here, and I just blew up, so yeah, he sends a lot of bullets. But the bosses work same way the kind of normal enemies work, as in there's different bullet patterns, but bosses will have multiple bullet patterns. And as you progress through the arcade mode, different enemies, like different bosses, like the first boss kind of has this sort of mini boss thing before it, and that enemy becomes a more common enemy as you progress, which is quite interesting in my opinion. Now, I'm just doing terrible at these because I'm trying to commentate and do this at the same time, which is kind of not easy in these types of games, but yeah, so that's kind of how that works as well. And we can go ahead and hit shift and exit out of here. And that's kind of that. Now, I want to go ahead and go into the arcade mode. Now, when you select arcade, you have the casual mode, which is probably what I should be playing. And then there's veteran, which is for experienced players, which I should work up to. And then there's hell mode, which don't even try this if you don't play shmups. This will just, I could not think straight when I was on here. There was lots of bullets everywhere, and it started off pretty crazy. But I'm going to go ahead on veteran. Now, this is what I was talking about, the normal and hardcore mode. Now, in hardcore, no health items drop, and there's no checkpoints. So if you die at, like, a boss or something, you have to start from the very beginning. And this is probably the more interesting mode that most people want to play on, I think, if they're more hardcore fans of the genre. But normal for all the casual players. And then you can also hit on casual if you want for the easier style of the game. Now, I personally like a challenge. I like a challenge a lot. So which one do I want to do? I'll go ahead and do this one, I guess. I really don't know which ship I should do. I'm just selecting them.
This is the NRV Yoshi.
Now here's a little bit of the story bits.
A massive SETI fleet just walked into our system and opened fire.
You'll notice the voice acting is not amazing. Now this is where my complaints part of the video comes in. So the story itself, I'm gonna go ahead and skip this because quite frankly I don't really care too much. No offense. The story is interesting, as in it's kind of a little bit more than you'd have in a shmup. Normally in a shmup it'd just be like, go blow stuff up, and that's pretty much what you do, and I'm perfectly fine with that experience. And the classic version is pretty much that way as well. I had like little text elements and stuff like that was more arcade style. Now in EX they decided to introduce the whole audio version to where they have voice actors and stuff like that, and while the voice acting is not the worst that I've ever heard in my life, the quality is not exactly up to snuff in what I would find. I find it kind of cringeworthy, and it's not very good. Now, some of the music I would like to mention as well. Like, some of the music I don't really like the boss music that it plays every time. It has like this kind of Western feel to it that I don't feel necessarily fits the game. However, the rest of the tracks I'm perfectly okay with, and I actually like them. There was one particular track that I was listening to on one of the stages to where I'm just like, I could listen to this all day. Like, it was just that good of a song, but not all the music is there. So it's kind of hit and miss. Some of it's all right, some of it's amazing, and then the boss music particularly, I don't like it at all. There's not a lot of tracks, but there's enough variety that I feel that it doesn't get too samey, aside from the boss music that plays every time you get to a boss. So you'll hear it 7 times instead of just once or twice. So that does kind of grind on me a little bit, and that's mostly going to be personal preference. Now, graphic style, that I actually like a lot. Like, I like the graphic style of this. They went with this more classic kind of style, and it is the same art style as the classic version, but they amped up the details. Now, I have played the classic version. I should probably mention that while I'm talking about this. And they've put a lot more detail into the ships in that version as well. So if you played those and you want to see the new ships, it's definitely something to look at. And the ships are detailed, the explosions look nice, the collectibles are easy to see. One thing I will mention is I wish that some of the bullets were a little bit more transparent, like your bullets were a little bit more transparent, because my eyes aren't trained for these types of games as much as they used to be, so it can get difficult for a lot of more casual players to be able to see what's going on. But for other people, for people that actually like the genre, then yeah, it fits pretty well. And I'm gonna go ahead and, can I switch ships? There we go. So I just used a hyper for that one. I don't think I can switch ships while I'm in the middle of a level, so that won't be a thing. I should probably just exit out and do that. But as you see here, the arcade mode actually has a little bit more progression in the way that the ships show up in the Zen mode. And the progression of the ships is actually quite nice. It introduces enough new ships on each stage that it keeps it interesting as well. I am slightly disappointed that there's only going to be 6 stages. Now, I'm obviously not good enough to clear that stage I was on. I'll probably go back to this and play on casual just to get on all the stages, because I'm like that and I want to see all the bosses. And the bosses are different as well. Like, each boss has different mechanics and different bullet patterns. And the thing is, like, in this one, when you see a certain enemy type, you actually know what type of bullet pattern and movement pattern it's going to have, which is quite nice. Actually, I can just beat this boss real quick. So here's another boss. This is the first boss you go into, the Helldiver. And we'll go ahead and clear this one. Now, I'll go ahead and go into my conclusion while I'm kind of trying to dodge all these. Now, as you see, it's kind of hard to see with the flamethrower going on. That's why I kind of wish that it was a little bit transparent. I did drop all my power-ups when I got hit, which is unfortunate. I'm not too good at this game, to mention. But yeah, so my conclusion. This is actually a really, really fun game. Now, it doesn't really do anything different that I haven't seen before. Oh, wow, I died. That's cool. Oops, I accidentally used my hyper. So it doesn't necessarily do anything that I haven't seen before in a shmup. But it does enough that it's actually pretty fun. Like, it does what it aims to do really, really well, and it's a good contender. And if you like these arcadey type style games, this is definitely one to look at. If you're a fan of the shmup genre, it's definitely one you should pick up, because it is a very, very solid game. And I have very, very little complaints about it aside from those visual aspects, which most of my complaints about it are going to be subjective. And the story stuff, most people playing shmups probably are not going to care too much about the story as well. Although it is nice to have, as it's something that's normally not included in these types of games, which is also awesome. So, solid recommendation for me. If you like these type of game, if you like shmups, you will definitely find this one interesting. Just don't expect anything that you haven't seen before, but it is a solid experience nonetheless. So yeah, that's me on it, I guess. I've been enjoying it, so I'll probably be playing it more, and hopefully I end up doing this in the background of some of my topic videos, because it is a pretty fun game. Anyways, here's the boss exploding. We get a bunch of points. Go ahead and collect this. We can go ahead and skip forward a little bit. But yeah, anyways, this has been Michael, aka Spirit Shard, with Super Squadron
Super Galaxy Squadron, the SETI are retrieving.
Yeah, Super Galaxy Squadron, as she said. So yeah, Super Galaxy I can't even speak anymore. Probably a good thing I'm ending this video. Anyways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to go ahead and switch ships real quick. Yeah, you can actually just switch ships whenever you want. We'll go ahead and do Cobalt for a while. Yeah, anyways, like I was saying, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one, or dislike it if you didn't like it. That's fine too. And, you know, just if you see other shmups you want to see, or, you know, stuff like that, or maybe you got some input on this game, maybe you've tried the classic, and, you know, maybe what's your perspective? Maybe you've played a ton of the classic, maybe you're on the leaderboards of the classic or something like that, and you're a pro at the game. You know, what's the differences that you can tell me? Because while I have the classic version available, because I have the EX version and it comes with both of them, you know, I don't know necessarily all the differences, so maybe there's some differences that you actually like in the classic. You know, make sure to leave those in the comments below. And aside from that, you know, make sure to have a good day. That's just going to be my output for the video and stuff like that. So, hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go ahead and use this guy's hyper, which shoots a giant smart bomb, which you would expect from these types. And I'm enjoying it, so I'll probably keep playing. Anyways, see you guys in the next video.